Welcome to the Technical Writing Success Podcast from Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. Hire us for your AI coaching needs. This is episode 187. I'm Fred Jones.
And I'm Daphne Blake.
This episode reviews an informative article from technical writer Ihuoma and Anosike in Nigeria entitled, "Is AI Really Going to Replace Technical Writers?" That was published on LinkedIn. So we're looking at this quiet, almost irrational anxiety that is just sweeping the tech writing industry right now.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Right. And we really want to figure out for you, the listener, if this fear is justified by the actual data or if it's just a massive misunderstanding of what a modern technical writer actually does.
It's totally a misunderstanding. And Ihuoma's article is so compelling because she doesn't just start with dry automation statistics. She actually gets into the psychological weight people are carrying.
Which is heavy right now.
So heavy. Like she mentions the senior developer who actually pulled a junior writer aside and gave them some crazy advice. They literally said, don't use artificial intelligence. It will take away your smartness.
Wait, really? Take away your smartness?
Yeah. Can you imagine? It reveals so much about the emotional landscape of the industry right now.
Wow.
And she spoke at two different events recently in 2025, Tech Express 2025, and the Women in Tech Breakfast by DevFest.
Completely different audiences.
Right, exactly. Different states, totally different crowds. But the dominant conversation was identical. Everyone kept bringing it back to one pressing fear, asking, are we all about to be replaced?
It's not like this panic just happened overnight. She traces this exact same fear all the way back to her speaking engagement at Google I/O Extended Port Harcourt back in 2024.
Right, so it's been brewing for a while.
People are genuinely scared. Writers are feeling actual guilt for using AI tools for something as simple as brainstorming.
Oh, the guilt factor is fascinating.
Yeah, they worry it makes them look lazy, or even worse, that they're feeding this machine that will eventually steal their livelihood.
Which is such a psychological barrier. There's this pervasive belief that leaning on artificial intelligence means you are somehow surrendering your expertise.
Yes, exactly.
But when you actually put that fear under a microscope, it's just a bizarre form of professional self-sabotage. It's confusing the physical exertion of typing with the actual value of the profession.
It reminds me of physical labor. Like, imagine a veteran carpenter walking onto a modern construction site, looking at a brand new, highly calibrated power saw and just refusing to plug it in.
Right, because they're scared of it.
Yeah, and if you ask why, they tell you they're afraid they'll forget how to use a handsaw and therefore they won't be a real carpenter anymore.
That's a perfect analogy. The flaw in that logic is so obvious.
Right. The trade isn't the physical act of moving metal back and forth through wood. The trade is understanding load-bearing walls, reading the blueprints, and, building a house that doesn't collapse on people.
Exactly. And that distinction between the tool and the trade is the core issue here. Highly experienced professionals are looking at the surface-level capabilities of these large language models and just panicking.
Because they see a machine generate 1,000 words in 4 seconds.
Right. And they assume the game is over. But that assumes the entire value of the writer was just producing those 1,000 words.
Which makes sense until you actually look under the hood at what these algorithms are doing.
So true.
Like, there was this study last month titled Technical Report Writing Efficiency Using AI-Powered Tools. They surveyed 83 technical writers, and they found this massive gap between what writers think the software can do and where it actually succeeds.
Yeah, the data paints a very clear picture of what works and what completely fails. On the positive side, the boon is undeniable speed.
Huge time saver.
Massive.
Yeah.
If you're dealing with repetitive tasks, simple template-based documentation, or just basic formatting and markdown, the software is incredible. It thrives on structure.
But then we hit the bane. The study found that artificial intelligence completely fails when you introduce context. It has zero domain-specific understanding.
Because it's just a predictive text engine.
Exactly. It's mathematically guessing the next logical word based on its training data.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually know if the server is turned on or off.
It has perfect grammar, but absolutely zero situational awareness.
Yeah, the source material had this great quote. It said, the software is great at building the skeleton, but humans still need to supply the brain.
I love that. It's like relying on a GPS that has the whole map memorized, but it can't see that the bridge right in front of you is closed for construction.
Wow, yeah.
The algorithm knows the map of the language, but you, the human writer, are the driver who actually sees the roadblocks and the real-world conditions.
Well, hold on. Let me play devil's advocate for a second.
Sure.
If I put myself in the shoes of a junior writer listening to this, I see a major problem. Historically, junior writers rely on building those exact skeletons to learn the ropes.
They do, yeah.
So if this software is taking over the basic formatting, the templates, and the first drafts, how is someone fresh out of college supposed to get their foot in the door? Doesn't this completely wipe out the entry-level tier?
Well, that is the most urgent question the industry is grappling with right now, but the TechTarget article cited in the piece addresses this perfectly.
Okay, what do they say?
They're redefining the entry-level baseline. The entry-level job isn't disappearing, but it is requiring a higher initial tier of critical thinking.
Because the AI can't do the human parts.
Exactly. The software doesn't get up and walk over to a subject matter expert's desk. It can't interview an engineer to verify if a system's behavior actually matches what the documentation claims.
It lacks that translation layer.
Yes.
Like an engineer might say, we are deprecating the legacy auth token due to endpoint latency.
Classic engineer speak.
Right. And an algorithm will just spit out the legacy auth token as being deprecated. But a human writer realizes the user does not care about endpoint latency.
No, the user needs to know if they're going to be locked out of their account tomorrow.
Exactly. Do they need to reset their password? The machine lacks the empathy to bridge that gap.
So junior writers won't be hired just to fix commas and copy-paste boilerplate text anymore. They'll be hired to shadow those experts, learn how to ask probing questions, and evaluate the algorithm skeleton.
Shifting from content generators to content evaluators.
Precisely.
Let's take a brief break for a special message from our producer, Curt Robbins.
Hi, this is Curt Robbins. First, thanks for listening. I truly appreciate your support. I want to let you know that I'm currently accepting new clients. My rates are affordable, and I have more than 25 years of experience working for enterprise companies like Microsoft, Northrop Grumman, Oracle, PNC Bank, FedEx, USAA, and Wells Fargo, among many others. If you want to improve your IT documentation and communications, hire me. I deliver fast, know how to use AI to improve efficiency and accuracy, and love going the extra mile to satisfy my clients. Thank you for subscribing and listening. Back to you, Daphne and Fred.
Welcome back to the Technical Writing Success Podcast, where we help you get smarter than your competition.
So, right before the break, we established that the software is acting as the skeleton, which forces the human writer to become the brain.
Right.
Now we need to look at how the daily mechanics of the job are actually shifting to accommodate that. According to industry reports from the article, automation could handle up to 50% of the hours involved in technical writing.
50%, half the hours.
That is a staggering metric when you think about corporate resource allocation. It changes the entire hiring landscape.
Okay, but let me push back on the corporate reality of that 50% metric for a second.
Go for it.
If I'm an executive looking at a spreadsheet, and I see that a piece of software can automate half the hours my writing team works, the immediate, ruthless corporate instinct is to just fire half the team.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? If the work takes half the time, surely I only need half the people. How does the industry survive that kind of spreadsheet math?
Well, that's the exact math driving the anxiety we were talking about earlier. But it relies on a completely flawed premise.
Which is?
The assumption that the only value a technical writer provides is volume. Ihuoma's key point counters this narrative by clarifying that the automation of tasks is not the same thing as the erasure of jobs.
That's a great distinction.
Writing is elevating away from raw content production. It's moving toward designing, verifying, curating, and strategizing.
So it's the difference between typing out a manual and ensuring the manual is actually legally compliant and safe to use.
Exactly. The algorithm can generate the manual in 4 seconds, but it cannot perform quality assurance.
Right.
It cannot manage the cross-team collaboration required to ensure that marketing, legal, and engineering are all aligned on what the product actually does.
So if a company cuts their writing staff in half just because the software types faster, they're going to end up with a massive repository of structurally flawless documentation that is completely out of touch with the actual product.
The volume of text goes way up, but the accuracy and the user empathy just plummet. You need the human operator to manage that entire knowledge ecosystem.
Okay, so we've diagnosed the root of the anxiety, we've analyzed the predictive mechanics of the tools, and we've looked at the changing corporate math.
We've covered a lot.
We have. But to ensure you, the listener, come away with a practical advantage, we need to break down the actionable survival blueprint the author lays out
The author's ultimate conclusion really sets the stakes perfectly. She says artificial intelligence will not replace technical writers. It will replace writers who refuse to adapt.
That is the nail on the head.
It really is, and the first step in adapting is learning how systems actually work. You simply cannot document a system you don't understand, regardless of how intricate your prompt engineering is.
Right, because you need at least a beginner-level grasp of the architecture just to spot when the algorithm is hallucinating a technical step.
Exactly. You have to catch its mistakes. Then step 2 shifts your focus from the page to the ecosystem. You have to master content design and information architecture.
Because you're no longer just writing a single step-by-step guide.
No, you're mapping a complete user journey. How does the troubleshooting page link to the API reference? How does a new user navigate from onboarding to advanced features?
And the algorithm does not understand the holistic user journey at all. You have to design that map.
Precisely. Step 3 requires doubling down on the human element, practicing your interview skills with subject matter experts.
Which is an art form in itself.
It really is. You have to develop the soft skills to sit down with a lead engineer who has been staring at code for 14 hours and extract the core why behind a new feature.
Right. An algorithm cannot read the room. It can't tell when an engineer is skipping over a crucial detail just because they assume it's obvious to everyone else.
And it definitely can't ask the intuitive follow-up questions that save users hours of frustration down the line.
So true. You have to master how to guide the tool. Think of yourself as a film director, and the algorithm is your camera crew.
Oh, I like that.
The crew can operate the heavy machinery, but you have to tell them where to point it, what the framing should be, and what the ultimate vision is.
Guiding the machine.
Exactly. And finally, strengthen your editing and verification skills. You must become the ultimate gatekeeper for truth and clarity.
Because with the sheer volume of text being generated now, the absolute premium is on accuracy.
Exactly.
You are no longer in a foot race against a machine to see who can type words faster. Your job is to wield the machine to create clarity.
Which takes the profession entirely out of the weeds of syntax and elevates it to a strategic level.
It completely shifts the value proposition. Which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought regarding where the industry goes next for you to mull over.
Let's hear it.
If the actual generation of text is now heavily outsourced to these predictive engines, and the human being's daily focus is on system architecture, cross-team alignment, and deep user empathy, does the title technical writer even reflect reality anymore?
Oh, that's a great question.
Right. As we adapt to this new landscape, perhaps it's time we start thinking of ourselves and billing ourselves as technical content strategists.
Thank you for listening to the Technical Writing Success Podcast from Curt Robbins, where we help you get smarter than your competition. Hire us to coach you or your employees in AI to future-proof your career or company. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, and share. We'll see you next time.